My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran, Sankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I want to cover chapter 28 of Mahan's teachings. And chapter 28, he talks about visit to subtle regions. So what he's talking about here in this chapter is the different layers of our own consciousness. And I just want to explore this a little bit more. Some of it we have covered in the earlier part, so you'll see I'll draw some of the teachings from the earlier part. But here in this chapter, Swamiji speaks about how, we human beings, speak about heaven, hell, subtle things like angels and devas and demons, a lot of imaginary, things that our mind produces, the different thoughts, different visualization. Most men and women and, people have these kind of thoughts. And why do they have that? And, it brings a lot of sorrow, sometimes, the eureka moment of, wonder, happiness, and so on. So, why do people get these different experiences? So here, Swamiji and many great saints try to understand and explore these humanly experiences, and why do these appearances happen? Right? So there must be something in us that is giving us that visualization. It must be some of the experiences must be related to, there are subtle states of consciousness within us that is giving us that different experiences. And we want to explore that. And here Swamiji talks about how one can understand, when they understand the different states of consciousness, they'll be able to understand why these things happen. And when we understand why these things happen, then we can fully have learned to how to control this, manage this, use this effectively, and harness the power of these different states of experiences and then consciousness. Here in this, Swamiji gives a lot of examples of how the different experiences that he has got. But as I was exploring this, I wanted to have a better understanding of why do we have these experiences. We have these experiences because our body, mind, intellect, all these are tied, very closely by what nature's workings, part of nature is within us in different states of existence. And when the mind, matures, when the mind experiences these things, it reveals, various states of our own consciousness and the things around us. To have a good understanding of what this is, I'm going to take you through the layers of our own states of consciousness. Some of you all would already know this. Some of you all would have seen this. You would have seen in many scriptures, they talk about different layers of the human consciousness. And I want to take you through that today on how, when we understand our different states of consciousness, awareness, we see that we have a more, from a gross right up to a more subtle and more universal state of consciousness. As we evolve and as we mature to these different states of consciousness, our mind becomes wedded and welded to these different states of consciousness. It gives us different experiences. So let me take you through this exploration. So we spoke about in the last time, so in the last satsang, Swamiji speaks, we spoke about, how, the different states that we have, we have a physical body, and as we go deeper, we get into the electromagnetic field, and ultimately we evolve to a higher level of states of existence. We discover our own spiritual compass, and the mind starts this exploration and evolution. And ultimately, you see that the sense of refinement that takes place in our mind, which used to be gross and, wedded and welded to the gross body, mind is very gross. As we started, acquiring the tools of exploration of the mind, what I call spiritual compass or the Nyanawalal Paranjudi system, GPS systems, we are able to then slowly decipher the different layers of our own states of consciousness, ultimately reaching that final destination. It's what Swami says, seeking, still seeking, the seeker finds himself God. What is that universal God? What is that state of existence? Right? So from the gross to the energy, right up to the universal state. So let me take you through this discussion a little bit more. So what we have is this humanly body, and within that humanly body, there is some really complex states of existence that are built in by nature, and by also the universal force or whatever you call it, a God. In some scriptures they call it Prakriti and Purusha. And here, whatever we call it, somebody calls it small I, big I. But I'm going to take you through the different layers of experiences when the mind is caught in that different states of existence. So the first state is actually, I want to start, there are three states of experiences, three states of our own consciousness. And I'm going to start with the lowest level, which is actually the physical body. You would have probably heard this this is the yellow one. The physical body is what we call Annamaya Kosha. This is the gross bodily experience, and all of us experience this. So when there is a cut, we feel the pain. When we are hungry, we feel it. So this is the first state of our experience, and it's what we call the food illusion sheet. Food illusion means, this state continuously changes according to, what we eat, how we eat, the kind of exercise that we take, all those things. And it's tied to these five elements, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Ether is space. So we see that most human beings are caught in this state of this physical body. It's meeting the desires of the physical body. It is, experiencing the physical body. And many people are wedded and welded to that physical body. So that gives us that one state of existence. It's very interesting, a lot of the instincts are built, nature's built to protect the body so that we look after the full body or look for food when we are hungry, or look for a mate when we want to, pass on our genes to the next generation. So it's all about that conscious state of the body. When the body is, sick, the mind is so caught up, the mind also tends to fall sick. Right? So this is the first state of our understanding of that consciousness. And this is well documented in many of the scriptures, including Mahan. So the physical body is our first state of consciousness. And then the second state is actually what we call the astral body. And within the astral body, there's three parts. And I'm going to start with the bottom one, which is the energy sheet. This is what we call the pranayama kosha, which is our life force, the source of physical body's existence. All of us carry that life force. The life force, later on you'll see where it comes from. It is part and parcel of nature itself. Now, this life force, if our life force is weak, if we don't harness our life force, we see that, the body is impacted. This life force is very important to sustain that body. And you see that people who have that harness, that life force, are very vibrant, very dynamic. And there are people that you see that the life force is so dimming. And then you see that, they're so weak, and the body is weak, the mind is weak, and the level of energy is very, very low. And that gives you a different states of existence. So one is that when the mind is anchored on the body, the experiences is more instinctive. Many animals have this. When you feed a dog, when some other dog comes, it'll start fighting because it's trying to preserve his own physical body. And some humans have these two qualities. The energy, as I mentioned earlier, it depends on how well one, harnesses that life force. And Kundalini is one of the life force, right? So practicing Kundalini actually helps us to keep our body healthy, keep our brain healthy. So when our brain is healthy, we see that our mental sheet, which is the next layer of the astral body, becomes very strong. So the brain is part and parcel of that energy of, part and parcel of the body, which emanates important energy. It's got electromagnetic field. So if our life force is weak, if we don't harness the life force, we see that, the flow of energy in our body is diminished. The body gets weaker, the body gets sick, the brain gets weaker, the brain is unable to cognize, and you see it impacts our mental state. So this is another state that we see. The mental state is the other state within the astral body, which is what we call the energy sheet is called the pranayama kosha, which is our life force. It has a bearing on our physical body, our brain, and it has a direct impact on our mental state, which is manomaya kosha, which is our thoughts and our emotions. They move the pranas. So this is something that is really important, that one is that the source of energy is responsible for the health of the body, the brain, and also how the thoughts are generated. The thoughts and the emotions also reinforce that life force in us. So we see that there is a symbiotic relationship between that, the energy sheet and that, mental state. And this is where the dynamics between Mahan's Kundalini practice and the state of our mind, state of our brain, state of our mind in the context of all the thoughts that we generate. The mind becomes more calmer, more quieter, in that we get greater clarity of thoughts. We become more emotionally balanced. And that in itself helps the life force. So there's a nice interplay between, the energy, the physical body, and the mental state. Now, when the mental state is strong and powerful, we see that the mind has a sense of stability. The mind is not perturbed by things. The mind has the capacity and capability to understand things better. So again, we see that, it's a different state of our existence. Different people with different mental states, the quality of life is very different. When the mind is strong, it has an impact on what we call the intellectual sheet, right? Because it's gathering thoughts. There's a lot of clarity. It's storing it in the memory. Intellect is analyzing it. The intellectual power becomes stronger, the power of discrimination, viveka, and power to know and discern, to make decisions. So we see that there's a beautiful interplay between these different states of our own existence. The physical body, the annamaya kosha, and then we have the pranamaya kosha and manomaya, that is our emotional state, and then how we have a vijnanama kosha, which is our intellectual sheet. And in all this state, we see that our mind's state of play depends on how well these bodies are harnessed, the power of these bodies are harnessed. If one does it really well, it would understand the physical body, understand our astral body, intellectual power, the mental state, and the power of the energy that reinforces this. And that brings us to, so when our body is healthy, when our astral body is strong and vibrant and dynamic, sees that it leads us, because the mind now can put all the thoughts under electron microscope and have the power of analysis, power of understanding, sifting out what is not relevant, keeping what is eternal and everlasting. And this leads us to another state of existence, which is what called Anandamaya Kosha, which is actually a blissful sheet. We have this subtle identification, and we're able to separate who we are, that is the big I and the small I. So you are sitting in that corridor between material existence and the subtle existence. So we see that, this is why you see the three stages of initiation in the Mahan's context is so important. So we have a good understanding of physical body that gives us a sense of, a different way of understanding our own material reality. When we have a good understanding of our astral body, we see that our mental power, our intellectual sharpness, and the power of our energy is very different. And similarly, we see that as we harness this, both the body and the astral body, we see that we are able to, understand our causal body, the body that leads us to the sheath, the subtle, kind of a power, the substratum that animates this. Now you see that the physical body we can see, the astral body we can't see. This is what Swami speaks about form, formless form, in the earlier chapters. So you probably would have heard this different aspects of these teachings, and this is nothing new. It's there in the literature. But I want to add that something very interesting. Beyond this, there is a universal identity that we all have. So you see that the physical form is part of Prakriti or nature that has given rise to our physical body, inbuilt, the Annamaya Kosha, and then we have the software that gives us that, the mental capacity, the intellectual capacity, and the energy to sustain this body. And finally, this blissful state. But all this is powered by the universal identity. And I purposely drew this diagram in such a way that if you see very carefully, although you see the white sheet of the body, within that white sheet of body, you see the substratum of that which the universal identity is sitting, which is transcendental to the body, is also in that body. I'm talking about the darkness, that evil, that state of existence. So the body is actually sitting on that, or is enveloped by that universal identity. Why is it that we don't understand this? It's because our mind is anchored on the physical body, right? The physical body, our physical, attributes, physical personality. So we can't transcend to a higher level. Similarly, as we start using our mind, more effectively, we start, understanding there is a software called the mind and the intellect. Let's focus our energy, and you see that our life force is harnessed. And similarly, we start getting the blissful feeling. As that's most people stop at that. But as we pursue deeper and deeper, we become transcendental to that body. We see that the universal identity with infinite potential and possibility is actually hosting the body. And if you really see very, very clearly that infinite possibility, which I put it in a simple way, is also within that body that is powering the body, the physical body, the astral body, and the causal body. So we see that when we understand this, when you see the human mind is caught in different states of existence. For an ordinary crude person, it's all about that physical body's desires and instinct. As you go to a higher level, you see that, your mental state determines your personality. Your intellectuals, as you go higher, the intellectual state determines a higher level of the personality, and more subtle. And as you go deeper, you attain that higher level of Anandamaya Kosha, which is a blissful experience, transcendental to the body. But as you push further, even that, shock scenery disappears, and you see that the universal identity, you realize, within me, there is something that is transcendental to the body, that is sitting outside the body, which is encompassing the body, enrapturing the body, and you see that substratum, that infinite possibilities, is also that which is the creator of the body. And that's why the dark space outside and inside are the same. And as with that happens, you see that our mental or mindset becomes more and more universal. So everything that we see, becomes divine and godly and finite. So it's the different states of existence that one attains. And you see that then, whether you see yourself or your family or your friends or people around you, you see with the universal lens. You see heaven and hell equally. You see angels and devas and the demons all equally, because they are all made out of this, Urul substratum that Swamiji is talking about, the infinite potential and possibilities. So as you go deeper and deeper, you see that, research and investigations, Swamiji explains that, so beautifully. He says that heaven, hell, subtle, angels, devas, and devils are imaginary creation produced by thoughts, which are occasioned by man's sorrow, wonders, and happiness. The state of our mind, kind of thoughts we generate, depends on the state of mind, whether we are happy or joyful or peaceful. So you say words and ideas of heaven, hell are spread all over the world. And here Swami says, I took great pains to know everything about their existence, the different states of existence, and the appearances. And I have to say, after proper inquiring, research, investigation, that such things do not exist at all. So here, what he's saying here is that everything that we are seeing, with our mind that is caught up with the material world. And he says, even that, as your mind's lens become more and more universal, all this are just a transitory, illusion. So in this state that we see that everything that we do, if we are powered by that infinite possibility, the potential, our thoughts become infinite, inspiring. Our speech becomes infinite and inspiring. Our actions, and we see our body in a different light. We see our personality in a different light. We don't associate ourselves with the limitedness personality, but more of that universal personality. So here, when he means visit the subtle region, it means that the mind is now anchored on a more subtle state of existence. For some, it is the physical body. For others, it's the astral body. For others, it's the causal body that gives a lot of bliss. But for the Mahans, it is the universal body. And when they come to that state, you see that everything with a universal lens. And you see that the kind of, visits here means the kind of state of existence that you have is very different. And so what could be challenging for others, for you, you have no problems managing it. What was not clear for others, because they're seeing with a gross lens, for you it's very clear. So again, we see that, how to get there, how to get to that state. It requires deep introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and service. Service helps us to see divinity in everything that we do, in every person that we meet, in every event and every experiences. It reinforces what we learn, which is from within, and we become transcendental to that, and we see everything with the transcendental lens. So this is, and you read some of the examples of what Swamiji speaks about on how to get to that transcendental state, how he experienced that transcendental state, and how all of us we will have our own transcendental experiences. We have had a good number of years of the bodily experiences, people who use their mind, with viveka and vairagya, and controlling the senses, are able to experience an astral body, really understand their mind and intellect and the power within themselves, and attain that blissful state. So here it is that we have multiple personalities. Our state of mind depends very much on what the mind anchors itself on. If it anchors itself on the limited physical body, the mind will be limited. If the mind anchors itself on the universal personality, the mind becomes universal. With that, Samoshan.